Hello, Team Sheppard. I'm the 82nd Security Forces Visitor Center non-commissioned officer in charge. Over the next few videos, we will create how-to guides and hope to provide you with the information you need to access Sheppard Air Force Base for any occasion. Today, we will be going over the Real I.D. Act and how it applies to Sheppard Air Force Base. The Real I.D. Act, enacted by Congress in 2005, establishes the minimum security standards for state-issued identification credentials. This is in accordance with the 9/11 Commission's recommendation to enhance the security of identification documents. The Act restricts access to certain federal facilities, commercial aircraft, and nuclear power plants to individuals presenting Real I.D. compliant identification. Effective May 7, 2025, in accordance with Department of Defense guidance, non-Real I.D. Act compliant state-issued driver's licenses and identification credentials will no longer be accepted for identity proofing at Sheppard Air Force Base. This policy will strictly be enforced. Only Real I.D. Act compliant driver's license and identification credentials, that is, with a Real I.D. compliant star marking, or other approved forms of identification will be accepted for identity proofing of personnel requesting access to Sheppard Air Force Base, including all visitors. The following forms of identification are acceptable for installation access: Department of Homeland Security Trusted Traveler Cards, such as Global Entry, Nexus, Sentry, FAST, United States Department of Defense ID, Permanent Resident Card, Border Crossing Card, acceptable photo ID issued by a federally recognized tribal nation or Indian tribe. This includes enhanced tribal cards, PIV cards, foreign government issued passport, Canadian provisional driver's license, or Indian and Northern Affairs Canada card, Transportation Worker Identification Credential, United States Citizen and Immigration Services Employment Authorization Card, also known as an I-766, United States Merchant Mariner Credential, and Veterans Health Identification Card. Real I.D. compliant cards will have one of the following markings on the upper portion of the card. Verify your credential for the designated marking. If the card does not have one of these markings, it is not a Real I.D. compliant credential and will not be accepted as proof of identity. State-issued enhanced driver's license and identification cards are also acceptable. These are designated as acceptable border crossing documents by the Department of Homeland Security and are an acceptable alternative if you do not possess a Real I.D. These licenses have an image of the United States flag and the word "enhanced" on the top of the card. Please note the following. Minors 16 and over are required to provide identification, such as school ID, school enrollment paperwork, or a passport. These credentials must be presented if a Real I.D. is not available. Individuals arriving at the Visitor Control Center or gate without compliant identification will be denied installation access. Long-term passes and other passes will not be processed without a Real I.D. compliant identification or acceptable alternate forms of ID. Possession of a Real I.D. Act compliant state driver's license or enhanced driver's license or identification card does not guarantee installation access. All visitors must still meet all access requirements, including background checks. Real I.D. Act compliant state driver's license or enhanced driver's license and identification cards are not considered proof of U.S. residency. Foreign personnel must still possess a valid permanent resident card or a foreign passport with the appropriate I-551 documentation and must be further vetted by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations before being granted access to Sheppard Air Force Base. Individuals holding more than one acceptable credential must use the credential that most accurately reflects the capacity in which the individual is acting for that specific visit to the installation. For example, a retiree entering the installation as a contractor or a vendor must still obtain a DBIDS card or pass. Ensure compliance with the Real I.D. Act to facilitate seamless access to Sheppard Air Force Base. Contact the Visitor Center at 940-676-7441 with any questions you might have.